Well, hey everybody that's watching today. It's good to be with you guys. I'm Guy Allbrook with EXP Team Taylor, and today I've got Andy Gagliano with me of Gagliano Mortgage, and
Hey, everybody.
we're just going to talk about a couple of topics today that I thought was very interesting and have had some questions about. And one is home inspection versus appraisal. And so those are steps in that process that you would go through if you're a home buyer. And but the first thing I want to bring up is to help you go through the process, it is really good idea to look at finding a good agent, a good lender, someone that you can trust. And when we talk about what we're going to be discussing, I think you'll understand why. But when you start looking and going through the journey of home buying, if you get a realtor, they can help you with market insights, such as identifying home trends. They can look at new developments that are going around in the area. They can look at what the buyer demand is and really just an overall market update for you as you start looking in the areas that you want to purchase a home. And once you find a home, then you can make an offer, and then they can help you determine what the home is worth and recommend a competitive initial offer for you based on their knowledge of the neighborhood or the area that you're looking at. And also when it comes to negotiating, which we'll talk about, home inspection here in just a few minutes, but that could come in play when you start negotiating, because there may be an opportunity for you to get the best price based on contingencies of repairs or replacing things that need to be done before you actually buy the home. So that could come in those conversations about negotiating the right price. And then again, going back to just being familiar with the neighborhood, that goes to also things like the school system. If you got kids, do you want to get them in the school system you prefer, or how close in vicinity are you of the school system? How convenient is the school system? How about the things around you, the amenities like the shopping or restaurants or grocery store, things like that. And then professional recommendations. So, Andy is on the top of my list when it comes to recommending professional. And when it comes to referring a list of people that I trust for your lending and for your mortgage needs. So we have a list of people like Andy that I have no problem referring you to, so that you're going to be working with someone that's credible and that you can trust. And then overall, just helping you with the experience of the process. There's hiccups that have come along that we can help you with. There's due dates that come up that you don't want to miss. And then there's also a lot of paperwork that our good realtor could just help you oversee. So, and really, while you're doing life, they're focused on helping you streamline this process. When you got kids and you got activities, you got sports, you got work, you got all this going on, you need somebody to help you navigate and keep things on track. So those are things to think about as you start your home buying journey. So now let's turn to home inspection. So home inspection is in this process. Once you find a house that you like, that would be one of the first steps that you want to do. And a home inspection is about the condition of your home. So they come in, they do testing, functionality test of major systems in your home, such as your air conditioner. They also look at things that might need to be repaired or replaced. They might look in, see maybe there's some mold in the house that needs to be taken care of. But it's something that is very important, because you want to know those things as you start offering a price and you start negotiating, and before you close on that house and you move in and find out afterwards. The next thing I wanted to touch on is the appraisal. And this is about the fair market of your house. So it makes sure that they come in and they walk through the house with a licensed professional, and they make sure that they compare it with the features that's comparable to the other houses in your area. so that they can come up with a fair market value. And this is very important from a lender perspective that this be done. And I'm going to let Andy kind of take it here and give his thoughts on how that appraisal works, and then how a lender looks at that when he's determining to approve a loan for you to buy the house.
Yeah, thank you, Guy. I appreciate you having me on today to talk with you about this as well. So the appraisal is a very important key part of the mortgage process and being in the home buying process as well. And what the appraiser is doing is coming out and giving an opinion of value. It is his or her professional opinion of the value of that particular property. A home is worth, and no person that believes in a free market will tell you any differently. A home is worth what a willing seller is going to sell it for, and what a willing buyer is going to pay for it. Wherever those two things intersect, that is the true value of the home. However, a lender is not going to go off of that, because if you think about it, if you just have a seller and a buyer, those two parties are easily influenced by emotion, by feeling, by financial needs, whatever it may be. So having an independent third party to come out, inspect the property, compare it to like properties that have sold within the area within the last 12 months, preferably, is a very important part of the process. And so an appraiser is going to come out, give you his or her opinion of the value of the home, and then that appraisal is included as part of the loan package, part of the mortgage package, and is underwritten. And if it meets Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, USDA, or VA guidelines, then everything's fine. Now, let's talk about some potential issues that come up with appraisals. From time to time, that property won't meet FHA, VA, USDA, or conventional loan guidelines. And so there are things that an appraiser will note that need to be done to bring that property up to the acceptable standards of whatever agency is going to insure or to buy that loan from the mortgage company. And so if the appraiser will give that list, and if the seller can bring that property up to those standards and repair the things that the appraiser says need to be prepared, then we're fine. We're back on track and we can move towards closing. So that's one potential issue that can come up with an appraisal. Another potential issue that can come up with an appraisal is actually something we see probably more than the first one that I gave you, and that is the value of the home does not, the appraiser's opinion of value of the home does not equal or is not greater than the sales price. So let's talk very quickly about what can happen there. Most of the time, when a buyer is working with a really good real estate agent, that agent is going to put a clause in the contract that says that if the house does not appraise, then there's a list of things that can happen. Number one, the buyer can back out of the contract and get their earnest money back with a mutual release. That's probably not the route that anybody wants to take. The seller usually wants to sell, the buyer usually wants to buy. Let's try to figure out some solution, some compromise. So there's option one. Option two would be, let's compromise. Hey, seller, the buyer cannot pay the difference in the sales price and the appraisal in cash, because that's what would be required to happen. If the appraisal comes in low, as far as mortgage purposes are concerned, the mortgage company is going to say, we will finance 95%, 97%, 90%, whatever that number is, of the lesser of the sales price or the appraisal. So if the appraisal comes in below the sales price, let's use very a very elementary example just to keep my math easy in my head. So let's say the house is selling for $100,000
Mm-hmm.
and the appraisal comes in at 95,000. So there's a $5,000 gap.
Yeah.
So the buyer can come up with $5,000 in cash to give to the seller at closing on
Mhm.
top of their down payment based on that $95,000 value. So if we're going to loan them 95% of
Yeah.
the lesser of the appraisal or the sales price, and the appraisal comes in at 95,000, we'll loan them 95% of 95,000. So whatever that number is will be the loan amount, and then they'll have to come up with the difference to get to $100,000 in cash.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of buyers, and especially first-time buyers, don't have that cash to come up with. So at that point in time, they could go back to the seller or have Guy go back to the seller and say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, our buyer doesn't have the cash to pay the difference in the appraisal and the sales price. Can
Mhm.
you come down from your sales price of $100,000 to 95,000
Mhm.
so that your sales price equals the appraisal?
Yeah.
If you can do that, our buyer can move forward.
Right.
So that's option 3, is to have the seller come down in price.
Mm-hmm.
Now, option 4 is to even compromise on top of the compromise. So if the seller doesn't have the money to come, I'm sorry, if the buyer doesn't have the money to come up in price
Mm-hmm.
in cash to make up that difference in the appraisal and the sales price, and the seller can't come down because maybe they owe more than that
Right.
$95,000 figure, but they cannot come down in price to 95,000, then maybe the buyer and the seller meet in the middle and
Mm-hmm.
say, you know what? The buyer says, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I don't have $5,000 in cash to come up with at closing, but I can pay an extra $2,500 to get the sales price to $97,500. Can you come down $2,500? Or maybe it's 3,000 and 2,000 or
Yeah.
4,000
Mhm.
and 1,000, whatever
Yeah.
that number happens to be.
Right.
That's where having a great realtor like Guy can come in and help negotiate all that and get this transaction back on track to
Yeah.
get closed.
Well, those are great points. And I think, what you're talking about is, the value that a good realtor can give someone that's going through the journey, as we mentioned, and then that realtor having great relationships with, or that realtor talking with someone like Andy saying, hey, this is our situation. Do you have any thoughts on how we can work this out to get them into this house and loan them what they need? And so I think surrounding yourself as you're going on this process of looking for a home with people that really they're advocating for you to get what the dream home you want, and they're looking at a multiple set of options to make that happen for you. And to do that alone is really overwhelming. So I
Yeah.
think all the scenarios you just brought up are real, and you see them all the time, and they come up. And then the other thing that I know that nobody likes is surprises. So they think everything is running smooth, then out of the blue, they get blindsided by an issue that they're not comfortable with. They have people that they can turn to, like, Andy or myself, that can help you navigate through that process. So thank you for that, Andy. And I
Sure.
guess as we close, I always like to ask your market update and where we might stand with the housing market today, inventory, interest rates. Nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody knows for sure, but I know that you stay on top of this every day. So if you could give us an update, I sure appreciate it.
I will be glad to do that. Even though it may not be what you or anyone watching wants to hear, I'll be glad to do it.
Well, the thing about it is that's another reason that you need somebody you can trust.
That's
That's why
true.
I really want to work with my clients, and I want to tell them the good, bad, and the ugly. So I don't want to paint something that's not accurate, and I want them to understand that I'm always going to be honest with them. And that's why I associate with Andy, because he's always going to be honest with you. And it helps them plan as they look forward or what they're doing now. And I just mentioned no one likes surprises. So let's try to keep them informed as much as we can so that they can make good, educated decisions.
That's right. Yeah, you know, it's no surprise the number one complaint that consumers have through the home purchasing process with their realtor or with their mortgage person is lack of communication. And
Yes.
so we can't have that. That is not an acceptable reason for someone to be unhappy, because this is easy. These days it's too easy to communicate. Text, email, telephone, smoke
I
signals,
know. I know.
private messages or direct messages on social media. There is no reason why we can't communicate with someone. But in saying all that, the the thing to remember when it comes to interest rates is inflation is enemy number one for interest rates.
Mhm.
And if that's mortgage rates or your investments, whatever it happens to be, inflation is enemy number one for interest rates. And so as we see inflation, we think back, it hasn't been all that long ago, even though all of us have tried to just suppress the memory or forget that it even happened, but think back to COVID days.
Yeah.
So the economy basically shut down, inflation went to zero or even negative
Mhm.
because people weren't buying things. And
Right.
all of a sudden the economy opens back up and there's a lot of pent up demand. So people start buying things and spending money, and it drives prices up because the supply chain can't keep up with people's demands. So inflation starts to go up. Well, interest rates stayed down during that time as inflation continued to go up. And the economy continued to grow so strong that the Federal Reserve could not keep the interest rates down anymore because inflation was just continually going up. So
Control.
they raised rates, and as they raised rates, inflation started to come down a little bit. And the Federal Reserve raised rates, and then they just held them steady. So
Mhm.
what's happened now, this is where we are. Inflation has, or rates have remained at a higher number, and inflation dipped down, and now we're starting to see it come back up. And so I think some of this is twofold. The reason is twofold. Number one, people are still spending money.
Mhm.
Consumers are still spending money. Now, consumers don't seem to have as much liquid cash as they did before, but what do they have? They have record equity in their homes.
Right.
So they feel rich.
Mhm.
And if you feel rich, you tend to spend rich. And
Mhm.
so you start to charge up credit cards because you think, well, I'll charge credit cards up and I can always get a home equity line of credit because my home value has gone up so much. I can
Mhm.
tap into that equity and pay off my credit cards.
Mhm.
And there's truth to that. That can happen. But I'm saying all that to say people are still spending money. Credit card balances being carried over are at an all-time high as well. And
Mhm.
so the consumer is continuing to spend money, and that is continuing to drive inflation up. And then on top of that, well, there's this war going on, actually two wars going on in two very oil heavy or oil producing heavy parts of the country,
Right.
and that has caused fuel prices to go up.
Mhm.
I can't think of anything in this world that's not impacted by fuel prices.
Sure.
Even our electricity is impacted by fuel
Absolutely.
prices.
Yeah. Mhm.
So all of these things have continued to go up in price, and it's scaring the Federal Reserve again. And so there's talk about the Federal Reserve now not lowering rates in 2024 anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And they've mentioned, hey, we may lower it one time in December,
Mm-hmm.
but there's some whispers that the Federal Reserve may even raise rates again
Mm-hmm.
if inflation does not slow down some. So as inflation continues to go up, interest rates, mortgage rates will continue to go up. And we're just in that time period right now, So what do I say about that? Well, in summary, I'll say this. My opinion of the housing market has not changed. What I'm seeing, and I'd love to get guys' input on this, what I'm seeing is, yes, demand for housing is starting to slow down, but that's only half of the equation. We have supply and demand. So
Mm-hmm.
demand's starting to come down, but I'm also, at least in my little part of the world of what I see, I think I'm seeing supply starting to come down as well as these interest rates go up. So
Yes.
I don't see housing prices showing any sign of a correction because supply and demand has never been defeated and it won't be defeated this time. So as the supply goes down along with the demand, there's fewer homes to buy, but there's fewer people buying them. Those prices are still going to remain high.
Yeah.
So buy today is what I'm saying. And at some point in time in the future, these interest rates are going to come back down. And in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now, you'll be glad that you bought today at today's
Right.
elevated prices.
Yes, because then you have equity built up and you can always refinance. And, as I'm working in the market and even over this past weekend, doing an open house, we had probably 20 people come through the open house. So the market is there. I think people are realizing where the rates are, but there may be an outside chance of them going up again, but they're trying to take action now. And um, they know if they can do it now, the prices are not coming down. So if they do it now, like you just mentioned, 2 years from now, you're going to be glad you did because you're going to have equity in your home and you can always refinance. And so we're seeing that, there's a lot of activity. The other thing that's driving this is the time of year. So it
Right.
is spring, and so it is the season that everybody is looking to list their house. If you're looking to buy a house, it's a good time to be looking. I'm doing open houses just about every weekend for someone. So it's still an active time, and it's still a good time to buy a house. And I'm going to show my age a little bit, but I can remember when I bought my first house, the interest rate was, I think it was 13%.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I've talked to a couple this past weekend that we were laughing about it because they were about in my age group, and I think he paid 18%. So, I mean,
Right.
we're saying, right now we feel like we're okay where the interest rates are. We know we're not going to see the 3% or 4% probably again. So we're kind of thinking they're going to be steady and maybe go up a little bit again at the end of the year, or maybe not. Nobody knows. But we're not going to
Yeah.
wait around and see because we feel like it's very manageable where they are, what they were seeing. So it's a
Yeah.
lot of that has to do with just, I think where they were, a few years ago and where they are today. But I just don't believe they're going to go back to where they were. So,
Yeah.
um,
I don't think you're in the minority. I just, in my lifetime, I don't believe we'll see 3% or sub three mortgage rates again.
yeah.
A 7 to 8% mortgage is very, very normal.
Hmm.
I look at my career and I've seen rates as high as 9.25, and I've seen rates as low as below 3.
Hmm.
But we're right there in that six
That
percent to
really
eight
is.
percent range is perfectly normal as far as mortgage rates are concerned.
Yeah. Hmm.
And that's where the government wants us to be with rates.
Yeah.
They don't want us to be at 3%. It's not
Yeah.
healthy for us to be at 3% in interest rates.
No,
So
because you'll pay for it later. It's like, enjoy it now, pay me now or pay me later, but
it's true.
it's not healthy. So I think, and I'm hearing this through the market of the consumer, that they're getting comfortable where they are right now. So we're getting a lot of activity actually, but thank you for all your great points and all your education. Getting together with you and spending time with you is always a pleasure. And those of you who take the time to watch this, we certainly appreciate it. And really what we want to do is just bring you up-to-date information, maybe answer some questions and educate you on some of the key things that you need to be aware of when you're looking to buy a house. And and even a lot of the things we talk about, if you're going to list a house, you really need to understand both sides of it. What's the buyer going to be looking for? And can certainly help you with that too, because if you list a house, you need to be almost as educated as if you were buying a house, because you know what they're going to be looking for when they come to going through the process, like the financial appraisal of the house, how that might impact the process, how a home inspection may impact this process. So hopefully, whether you're listing or you're looking to buy a house, you gain some information from us that would be helpful. But thank you again, Andy. It's always a pleasure, as I said, and thank everybody for watching. And if you want to connect with Andy, Andy, I'll let you give your information out.
Yeah, you can call me at 205-979-4412, and I'm at extension 1. I'll be glad to help and answer any kind of questions that you might have. And God, thank you for having me on today. And how can someone reach you if they're interested in your services?
Well, thank you. Yeah, well, again, Guy Allbrook. I'm with EXP Realty with Team Taylor, and you can reach me. Just call my cell. I'm available all the time, 24/7. So 205-834-2300. And again, I think one of the key things about choosing a lender or a realtor is communication. So we're always here to help you, talk with you about anything that you need. No commitment, no obligation. Just give us a call if you have questions. You just want to get some information from us. Thanks again. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, guys. Thank you guys for watching.
Bye-bye.